what I think is cool about your set of tools is you didn't just pull these out of thin air one day and say, hey, I think this is a good idea. I want to start using these. You really came to these tools to help you thrive and help you live in some fairly challenging times. So could you talk a little bit about where you were and how you arrived at these tools in the first place?
They came out of necessity. I found myself backed into a corner. I found myself totally out of control emotionally, and I didn't know which way was up. And I I had to do something. We all have highs, we all have lows. I've had some amazing highs. I've traveled all over the world. I have two amazing kids. Uh, like you said, I've had an athletic career and started a couple nonprofits for children at risk. And at the same time, for as many highs as I had just as many lows. And actually on my list, there's more lows than highs. At 5 years old, my mother became mentally ill, and a little bit of back and forth, and she got locked up in a state mental institution and never got well, never came back to the house, never came back into our family. And my dad, who was working full time and going to school to try to get his second master's degree, he did everything he could. And we just lived, And then 13 years old, I started doing drugs, and it hooked me, and I was an addict right away. And I made it through 10th grade and I dropped out because there was no room in my life for drugs and school. By the time I was 18 or so, I became a junkie, if you know what that is. So the needle ruled my life, and it just kept going, everything under the sun. I overdosed twice in 2 months, and I knew I had to stop because I was going to be dead by the time I was 21. I knew it. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And on April 4th, 1989, I got clean. That was the last time I used drugs 31 years ago. And I started racing, and I decided, again, kind of reinvent myself. Now, what do I do with all this time? So I got my pro racing license later that year in 1989. In 1990, I started racing pro. And I had sponsors and I made money, and I felt an incredible responsibility to the people supporting me. So I took it very seriously, and I worked very, very, very hard while trying to balance a full-time work career at the bicycle stores. And part of the way through my racing career, I met a woman. We got married, had a kid, bought a house, had a kid. I got a big boy job, the big boy job. We were okay living in Baltimore. I got a promotion. We moved to Wisconsin, where I am now. Had a second kid. And it was too much. I just achieved way more than I could have ever imagined in my life, considering where I came from. But I went to work every day, and I came home every night at 5 o'clock. And I played with my kids every second I got. And so I got stuck, and I did a lot of different things, and I couldn't fix it. I was stuck, dead in the water. So I did the only thing that I could possibly do. I opened an Excel spreadsheet. And I figured it out. And in the first column A, it said, why or how am I unhappy? What am I unhappy about? And the second column said, what's the solution? And the third column said, what's the barrier to that solution? Why wouldn't that work? And the fourth column said, well, if that wouldn't work, what's the new solution? And then the other column said, well, what's the barrier to that? And maybe I went a couple more times, but eventually I came up with an outcome. You know, there it is, unhappiness.xls. Now it's .xlsx. But I figured it out. And most everything on that list, I think there were maybe 20 items on my list from 2003. Almost everything on the list I could do something about. There was a small little something that I could do to fix it. And so I started there. And the things on the list that I couldn't fix, well, that was refreshing because I'd explored all the options. I did the math. And I got to the point where, you know, the things I couldn't fix were inconsequential. I hated my car. Well, we didn't have money to buy a new car. I couldn't do anything about that. I just had to wait. And so I spell that on the list. But the solution was maybe I clean my car once a week. And maybe I buy a new stereo for $150 and put it in the shitty little car. And that started me off. You know, I'd use measurements and metrics and all kinds of other stuff through my racing. You know, I track my heart rate, my nutrition, and my calories and my recovery zones. And I write stuff down because when things swirl around in my head, I can't make total sense of them. But if I can speak them, if I can talk to someone, or if I can write them down, even better yet, because I'm talking to myself, then I challenge myself, is it true by the time it comes off my little fingers on the keyboard or off my pen on paper? It's avoiding avoidance. Look at reality and control your controllables. You know, I couldn't control if we got a new car or not, but I could control if it's clean. I could control if I showed up for work in the best state that I could, or the relationship, or we set up date nights or whatever. So, and the other thing that I do is I put together a list of, I call them time bombs, things that could go horribly, horribly wrong. And I have 11 things on my list that they would cripple me. They would take my breath away. And so by facing it and naming it and staring it down and trying to be at least as big as the problem you have, and maybe a teeny bit bigger, then you have a little bit of power and you get back on your feet quicker.
You also have a few other tools that you use as part of your daily and weekly reflection. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, you know, the unhappiness thing, I only do that like once a year. I mean, there was a really tough time where I think I took 4 years off. But every day I wake up, I make my bed, I go in, I start my oatmeal, I turn on music, I start making my list. And the first list is my basic to-do list, things that are possible, right? And I call it this one thing at a time. And it's 23 lines, A priority, B priority, C priority. I write down the item and I try to time estimate it so that I know what I'm dealing with. So I do this quickly, and then I take this sheet and I put it aside and I pull open my second sheet. And the second sheet is the top three. The top three is just kind of a summary, like what's my overall purpose for the day? What are the main three things I really want to get done? What are the three things I'm thankful for? This is my daily checklist. Like, this is just my overall high level summary. And then the last one, the last of the three lists for the day, it's today I will do this. And it's a schedule. It really doesn't take that long. And I know it's complicated, but this is my schedule. This is my calendar. And I say time frame from 5 a.m. to 6:30. I eat breakfast. I look at my list. I check Messenger. I send an email or two. And then at 6:30, I start working. I started writing stuff down like that, to-dos, in 1997 when I first got the job with Trek Bicycles. I was a sales rep. I was managing a big, complicated business, a lot of different accounts. I was on the move, road rep, all the time. And every single day for almost the first year, I would forget something. And I had lists, but they were all over the place. And so now I spend on average an hour and 15 minutes every single day organizing my stuff. I never forget anything. I don't leave the house doing an errand and forget the other thing that I was supposed to take with me because it's written down. And it's the ease and the calm that I feel when I'd walk out the door knowing that I didn't forget anything. I know I got it covered because I got a list of 50 things I just cleaned up into 10. Are you willing to do the hard work? Are you willing to sit down and maybe spend 4 or 5 hours on your unhappiness.xlsx spreadsheet to figure it out? Are you willing? That's your first step. That's put your shoes on, right? You have to be willing. You got to face it.